I remember the coffins. I remember the hollow-nosed bullets that the previous administration was acquiring in great numbers on both of those instances. And I could go further in terms of the equipment for executing people that they were storing at places across our country. That was not being done because it was planned far off into the future. This is a terrible worldwide domination that has afflicted humanity for 1,000 years and more. And we're at the point of being the chosen ones to not only witness, but to participate, hopefully, in the complete demise and demolition of this evil force that's been afflicting the world all this time.
Hey friends, Sean from SGT Report here. Thank you so very much for clicking play. Before we begin this very critical interview with Jett, where we delve into important information about what system is coming next. And frankly, friends, this system is unraveling in real time. Just a quick word from this interview's sponsor. Guys, as you know, crime rates are really soaring in many cities, especially cities led by Democrats. And obviously, no matter where you live, you need to be prepared. One thing you should add to your self-defense kit is the Fighter Flare flashlight by Prepper's Peak. This flashlight is a professional-grade, tactical, super bright flashlight, and it's solar-powered so you don't need batteries. It has a life-saving emergency strobe light setting, along with 4 other unique lighting modes, and it can be seen from over 500 meters away with 800 lumen. It also has a USB port to charge your phone, tablet, or other devices. It has a compass, wire cutter, and glass-breaking hammer, which incidentally makes it a handy self-defense tool as well. And you can get the Fighter Flare flashlight for 25% off by using my promo code SGT25, but supplies are limited. Go to fighterflare.com. I'll leave the link below this interview. Hey friends, welcome back. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's absolutely fantastic to have you guys here, and it's great to have back my friend Jett. Now, he's an author and a pundit. If you're not following him, do head over to classicalcapital.com or grab his book, The Fruits of Graft. Welcome back.
Thank you very much for having me, Sean. It's always a delight. Yeah, thank you.
Pleasure to have you back, Wayne. All right, first I just want to set the stage here that the big club that stands aligned against the American people, the big club includes the mainstream media, the dirty Democrats, the big banks, and big pharma. So to be clear, guys, this conversation is going to be mainly about the big bank, the Fed, but I want to set the stage and let you all know that they're all in on it together. And Twitter has locked out Trump Jr.'s account for posting press conference by pro-hydroxychloroquine doctors. If you haven't seen the clips, I'll leave the links below. I can't even play them here because YouTube will just take this video down. But passionate, honest doctors with integrity gave a press conference yesterday, the 27th. It's information that essentially neuters all of the Rona lies, and it's information the American people need to see. But Facebook has been scrubbing that information from their platform, as has been Twitter. I suppose YouTube will do the same. But a ray of hope, as I stated yesterday in my interview with Bob Kudla, Congressman Matt Gaetz has filed a criminal referral against Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg for lying to Congress about censorship of conservatives. I think the same thing is coming for Jack Dorsey over at Twitter, and I pray the same thing happens to the folks at YouTube and Google, and yes, you, Bezos, with your Amazon empire, delisting books about vaccines and other important issues, and of course your blog, Bezos blog, Washington Post. Now with that all said, friends, I want to turn our attention to the Fed, the bad bank, now in terminal mode. All right, very briefly, Wayne, can you just first explain to all of us what is Treasury debt?
Treasury debt is the money that the U.S. Treasury borrows in order to fund U.S. government operations, or for whatever purpose the Congress appropriates the funds.
All right. So if we look at the U.S. debt clock and it says stated current debt, not including unfunded liabilities, is $26.5 trillion, how much of that debt is Treasury debt?
Well, you're looking at the Fed's financial statement. You'd simply have to look at the breakdown on its financial statements as to how much of each kind of asset that they own. They regard treasury debt as a particular type of asset, and it is an important item to look at these days, because there has been a tremendous increase, unprecedented, of course, in our central bank, not at all in other central banks, because they always come to this point, that is, during their death, the amount of their currency they create, their fiat currency, just basically goes asymptotic, or in other words, skyrockets. That's what's happening now. I can quote you several figures on that if you'd like me to do so.
I have them right here. In your article, you note in 2008, the monetary base was $845 billion. Guys, this is so important. Listen to this. In 2008, the monetary base, $845 billion. In June 2019, $3.275 trillion. An average increase of 26% per year over 11 years, or a 288% increase in 11 years. But the Fed's monetary base just 1 year later, on June 30th, 2020, was $5 trillion, a 52.74% increase in a single year. They're loading the Fed with treasury debt, Wayne. Why are they doing this, and how close are we to a bankruptcy of the Fed and essentially of the USA?
Well, that is, as I said, the hallmark of the way fiat currencies always fail. In the end, they create so much of it that it is truly worthless. People can't buy ordinary things with wheelbarrows full of the currency. But this particular time, it appears to me that the Fed is now functionally being run by the Trump administration rather than by the so-called governors of the Federal Reserve. Again, it's a private bank. It's privately owned. It's primarily a Rothschild bank, but the other families of the globalist cabal are owners as well. They provide money particularly to fund the major banks of Wall Street and that sort of thing, but also the federal government, since it is our fiat currency. That is, it's what we use for money by law, even though it's not actually worth more than the paper it's written on, except for whatever promise the Fed can be held to. But in the circumstance of the Fed's practice now, it being reported from several other sources that the Fed is actually being run inside the Treasury Department, which means that the Fed chairman actually answers directly to the president, that is President Trump. And it has been reported in that regard that all of this new treasury debt now owned by the Fed is being done in a way that spends the new money created by the Fed to buy treasury debt that has been owned by foreign governments. I think that's a very important item if it is in fact true. Looking at the financial statements of the Fed, I can't be certain that it is, but I rely on those reports of others who are better informed that it comes from foreign governments, and it's important for this reason. When the Fed fails, we don't want a lot of other countries, foreign governments, whether Russia or China or Iran or anyone else, to be stuck with a lot of U.S. Treasury debt that we can't pay, that we're going to have to default on, and therefore would make those other countries enemies of the United States because we're not paying off on our bond. On the other hand, the other countries would be able, if they're holding our bonds, to say the U.S. government is liable for these things, and so you must pay us no matter what you have to do over the future years in order to get the debt paid. Since we're buying those back and putting them in the Fed, I'm referring to it as the bad bank now, because those bad assets are going there in order to be flushed out by a bankruptcy. That is, the U.S. Treasury debt would be flushed out as bad debt in the death of the Fed. And the cash that has gone out to the other countries would be used by them to buy whatever they can buy with, but they would basically be in the same circumstances as others using the Treasury cash or the Fed cash, that is, Americans and others. So I think it's a far better approach toward resolving this Fed problem than any other I can think of. And it leads me to believe further that the Fed really is in its end days, and we have a plan to do a reset, to do a move as promptly as possible. I've believed for quite some time that this is the president's plan, to move as promptly as possible with a new currency already ready to go, and hopefully, and I believe it will be, measured in value by gold, a certain specified amount of gold, so that its currency value will remain stable so long as we can maintain the gold reserves in order to exchange the currency for gold to those who wish to do so. That is the way a sound currency is operated. That's the way we operated until the time the Fed came into being, and in 1933, Franklin Roosevelt changed the Fed, changed the dollar to the point of being incapable of being exchanged for gold by Americans, although they allowed that to still be done by other central banks until 1972, 71. What we need to do is adopt a currency system that has, number one, stable value, and number two, the real value of the currency can be put into the pockets of the people who work for it. They don't have to have a central authority, so-called, saving all the value for them so they can rely on it if they need it at some future time. They need to be able to exchange it for the gold to put in their pockets so they have it, and they don't have to rely on the honesty of their politicians. That's a central flaw in just about any monetary system that is proposed nowadays, because people keep insisting, or the Keynesians do, or the globalist cabal, whatever you want to call them, that you really can't have a system that actually puts real value in the pockets.
Right.
But gold and silver are the two monetary metals. Silver being very useful also as a monetary metal because it is of a lower value, and so it can be used in reasonable amounts to buy just ordinary things rather than, buying a house or something of the sort. That gold is so valuable, it's used for those larger purposes.
Right. Let me ask you this. I want to circle back to the idea of a national bankruptcy. And so I'll try to be brief here, but I want to read a paragraph from your latest article. And then I want to try to share with the audience my view on the difference between this pain that we're going to go through with a president like Donald Trump versus if Hillary Clinton, who has pledged her allegiance, pretty much like Lori Lightfoot, the Chicago mayor, to a new world order. So let me read this. You wrote, "Default on Treasury debt is coming. Far better that the default be blamed on the real culprits, the Fed, its fiat currency, and its globalist cabal ownership, rather than the American people who themselves have been victimized by globalists and their fiat machinations. President Trump is very capable in such financial reorganizations." All right. That is true. And my question is this, and guys, by the way, there have been many companies throughout history that have declared bankruptcy and then reemerged stronger. So my question, Wayne, is can the USA essentially declare bankruptcy and reorganize and reemerge leaner and return to business like Donald Trump has done with some of his businesses in the past and others have done? Or would a default on Treasury debt, bankruptcy, trigger the end of life as we have known it under the dollar as the world's reserve currency?
Well, I'm quite sure that it can be done. particularly with the Treasury debt in the Fed, and the Fed having other obligations back to our government that should have been performed and back to our people. So certainly there are debts of the Fed to offset the debt of the Treasury. In other words, they can be put against each other and therefore resolved in such a way that the government comes out on top, the people come out on top, the Fed is destroyed in debt, as it ought to be. It has caused its owners to profit so immeasurably. I feel sure that a part of the president's plan is to gain back many of those assets that have been in my opinion, criminally obtained by the owners of the Fed by its use of a currency that loses value every year, which basically means that that value is being put into the treasuries of the families who own the Fed. Asset is stolen from the workers who produced the value. All of that in terms of the right and truth, if this can be done for America, it will be the first time in history that anyone has ever prevailed in one of these struggles with the fiat families. But we are able to be in that position because the president has strengthened our military back to a point of being formidable when it was in a position of setting itself up for defeat with such weakening as has been done in previous administrations, and spending so many lives in these fiat war currency wars that we've been fighting around the world. But yes, I believe there is a plan in place that will, in my viewpoint, I've held this view for some time.
I know you have. That's why I wanted to talk about it.
The plan would be to have a system ready to go so that from the time you announce the exchange of currencies, you already know what you're announcing, you know what the value is going to be, and it's well enough planned so that there is as little disruption to ordinary business and the survivability of the American population and others, so that they can get the new money and begin functioning in that way on a basis that allows prosperity to go forward from there, rather than being in a limbo that lasts for days and weeks and months and even years in some places, as has been the case. No country has been able to take on the global cabal in the past and survive. They've been conquered and destroyed one after another. Germany, Russia, and so forth, all of them the victims of this kind of the cabalist rule over every government, and of course its overall plan to destroy every national government and take over as a world dictatorship. That's what its goal is.
Right.
It's said so many times.
Right. Well, this is why I wanted to have the conversation, and this is why I've opened myself up to the possibility that things could end well, or at least a lot better than they would have under Hillary Clinton or one of the Dirty D's. All right. Because, guys, when you think about it, what essentially happens in a bankruptcy, in a default on your debt, on your home mortgage? The bank takes the house. They take your car. They come after your assets. If Hillary Clinton was in the White House and we were going through pain like a bankruptcy, what might happen? Well, the bankers would take, what? The national parks. Maybe they would claim ownership via our social security numbers and our birth certificates on we the people. Maybe they would usher out a vaccine that maybe was harmful and therefore culled the herd. Just a thought. In this case, we have a president in the White House that is capable of taking us through this pain and maybe keeping us intact with our sovereignty and our human dignity. Is that what you think is going to happen, Wayne? Because that is our only hope. And, by the way, in your article, you note this may not be possible in just one term. So if President Trump isn't still president after the November election, we're going to be right back in a deep, dark hole.
Well, yes, I think what you described as being the downside, if we don't have this plan, is actually quite a lot darker, in all honesty, than what you described. I remember the coffins. I remember the hollow-nosed bullets that the previous administration was acquiring in great numbers on both of those instances. And I could go further in terms of the equipment for executing people that they were storing at places across our country. That was not being done because it was planned far off into the future. It was a part of our actually past years, in my estimation. So I remain hopeful. It's not an easy job by any means. It's not been accomplished in history since these 13 families and more have gained their powers and have expanded the evil that they do. Our knowledge of it is growing by the day as more and more reports are being made of the awful operations that they are doing, the kind of activities involved with many prominent people of America, deeply involved and criminally involved. This is a terrible worldwide domination that has afflicted humanity for 1,000 years and more. And we're at the point of being the chosen ones to not only witness, but to participate, hopefully, in the complete demise and demolition of this evil force that's been afflicting the world all this time. So the Fed is just a part of it. It's an important part to base future prosperity on. But in terms of getting rid of this evil, not just in America, but in countries worldwide, they're watching us. Many people around the world are placing their hopes on their own governments to be able to respond and follow in his footpath. So we have plenty of people cheering us on and helping us, I feel sure. And I'm very hopeful and even confident that we're going to prevail and destroy this menace that is almost beyond belief. I mean, in past years, I never would have thought that the kind of evil that is now being reported in detail could possibly be the case, but it is, I'm convinced, and we've got to do something about it. That's what our president is doing, along with our help and support, and the help and support of your channel, Sean. So I greatly appreciate the chance to be able to share my views and observations with your great audience.
Well, thank you for that. And, I love having you on. And I think what you're referring to is the dirty, dark, satanic business of human trafficking, and specifically child sex trafficking and worse. And you're right. The president and the administration is targeting human trafficking regardless of what the trolls want to say. And we hope that those involved at the highest levels of governments, maybe in our own government, hashtag Podesta emails, we hope people are exposed and brought to justice, hashtag Hollywood. But let me circle back to gold and silver. In the rosiest scenario of a default on the Treasury debt, gold and silver are going higher regardless?
What will have to be done is that clearly the dollar we have presently, the Federal Reserve note, is not worth the price that it is presently, say, for gold. I don't follow on a daily basis, but say $2,500 an ounce. The dollar is not worth that. And the more they're printing now, it's not anywhere close. And so therefore, in order to avoid a deflation that would be very difficult, very harmful to business and to prosperity and to expansion, we have to go to a price for gold in the new currency that does not create a deflation in our economy. So that means that our new currency has to give a proper value to gold and to silver, so that if we, for example, were to go back, well, let's have $1,000 gold, that would be a good thing. No, it wouldn't be a good thing, because our cost basis for our goods and services has already gone beyond that, and to deflate it would mean that prices would have to drop back down, and you just put more firms in bankruptcy. So I know it gets somewhat complex,
Well,
but
let me
that
just
has to
jump
be
in.
carefully valued so that the real value is reflected in the new currency, and it can remain at that stable value so that business can prosper by using a known measure of value and making it sales and pricing.
Okay. Well, none of us know how this is going to shake out. What I know for sure is as long as these fiat dollars continue to be printed, the prices of silver and gold are going to go up when valued in USD. Now, whatever system is coming next is going to have to reprice those assets in whatever the new thing is. And hopefully it's not Fed coin. We know what these bankers want. But in my view, Wayne, those who hold physical silver and physical gold now, when we go into the new system, those people will have more wealth than those who didn't, than those who just remained in fiat. Am I stating that correctly? What's your thought?
They will have new wealth.
More wealth.
At least their wealth will be preserved when there's an adjustment in the currency to the new price, because the price of the gold and silver has been artificially suppressed. Therefore, they bought it at a under the market cost. That's what it amounts to. So yes, they're going to have that advantage, but in the long term, what you need is a currency that it remains very stable in value, and therefore you prosper by doing business and doing production rather than simply speculating on what the price of the metal will be. Those who own it now, I'm quite convinced, will have a much better time in terms of preserving their wealth than those who have cash or other type of paper assets, whether stocks and bonds or whatever. It's important to understand that, for example, if you go to $25,000 an ounce gold or 50 or whatever, pick your number, eventually the prices of all other goods are going to have to come to the point of making it rational to pay 50,000 of the dollars that you earn for a little round circle of gold, because that's all the gold is going to be worth, that little round circle. And therefore, what I'm saying to you and to others is that the price of all things, whether it's a loaf of bread or or any other vital commodity, or your home or anything else, all of those are going to adjust to the point of their price being consistent with $25,000 for an ounce of gold metal. That means the higher you go on the gold price, the more inflationary our prices will be. So I think what they will do is they will try to do their best assessment of the prices of things now, and the amount of dollars out there and the number of new currency they're going to produce. They will be doing that on a basis that as closely matches of real assets now, so that there will be as little inflation as possible in the future. If you allow a lot of room for future inflation, you're going to have to redo the gold price, or you can't stay at the gold price as a value measure for your currency.
Well, the other thing we would need is a cultural change in Washington, D.C., and we'd need these dirty politicians on the right and the left to learn how to live within their means. And none of them know how to do that right now, maybe with the exception of Rand Paul and a few others. So that's the big problem. And the last thing I want to ask you is what happens to all of the other nations then that are swimming in debt? If this rosy scenario for essentially U.S. bankruptcy or Treasury default happens in the best way under Trump, what happens to all the other nations that are standing there holding the bag saying, hey, what about us?
Well, I think what happens to them is something they want to happen to them. They have been, in effect, lobbying and pushing and hoping for it in the nations that have organized to push for a gold standard. that trading the BRICS nations have been looking toward doing that. They wanted a currency measured in gold. But what they are faced with presently is having this fiat currency that has been forced on them in international trade through in large part, the power of the American dollar, including the power of the American military. And so in the long run, all of those nations are going to go to a gold standard as well, and they will want to, so that when they sell things to us, they get gold back for it. They can earn gold and have real value, as opposed to having a currency that comes to the point of bankruptcy every time when it's a fiat currency. I'm sure they will much prefer that, and it will be better for their trade, better for their prosperity in the long term, just as it will be for ours.
All right. Well, we will see how it all plays out. It's going to play out one way or the other, and for certain, things are changing, guys. They're going to change. So if you want to get your hands on some physical silver, you may want to check out my buddies at sdbullion.com. They sell physical gold as well. Wayne, do you want to tell people how they can get your wonderful book, The Fruits of Graft?
Yes, please. It's on classicalcapital.com. That's the best place to get it, because I sell it there for $25 for the hardback, sewn bound, so it doesn't come apart. It's a $25 free shipping within the United States. If you're in a foreign country, please get the proper tab for your area that's shown on the button. Not on the button, but in a separate tab. But it's at classicalcapital.com. If you try to get it through Amazon or any other place, it's a much higher price because they're resellers. I don't sell there any longer. Classicalcapital.com, and I might mention that it has won 7-star awards as the 6th best nonfiction in the history of Robert David Steele, judging such over 2,000 nonfiction books. So it tells you the truth about the Great Depression, how it was actually imposed on us by our politicians and by the cabal who control those politicians, and much else right up through the year 2011 that leads right up to the unbelievable turn of events. They will actually have a president and a champion after all these years that is opposing the globalist cabal rather than being an operative for them. The others who've done that have been shot in one time or another in their terms, and so I'm very hopeful that people will take the chance. Actually, my greatest sales have come from your audience, Sean. I much appreciate them. But this is the only place to find the truth about the Great Depression and what was done to all of our families on purpose by acts that are clearly definable and clearly understandable as what their effects were going to be. I thank you for the chance of letting me tell people about that, because the great number of your audience still does not have the book.
Well, it is an important read, and you're an important author, Wayne, and an important voice in this movement. So I want to thank you for your time, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Sean.
Yeah, my pleasure. Guys, the website for Wayne Jett is classicalcapital.com, and he puts out a new piece, I think at least once a week, sometimes twice a week, but check it out. And for real news, friends, visit us directly, please, at sgtreport.com. You'll notice Google, when you type in SGT Report, it doesn't come up. The website does not come up in the search results. The same is now true for Breitbart and so many other conservative .coms out there. These people are hardcore criminals. Let's pray they're all brought to justice. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. God bless. Bye-bye.
They don't really care what the London bullion banks say. I want my gold and I want it now. You know, you're talking about India, you're talking about China, you're talking about Japan, you're talking about Korea. They're all buying gold